I'll just look up it if you want on the way. There you go. Okay.
Okay.
So if you don't want to, you don't want to. Thank you.
Ready? All right, I'll go ahead and call the meeting to order. Could we please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. At this time, I would call on Ms. Flatness to do a roll call vote, please.
Karen Flatness here. Joanne Maloney. Here. Rich Mueller.
Here. Here.
Travis Routh.
Here.
Neil Schlake.
Here. Here.
Dan Schmidt.
Here.
Rick Schultz.
Here. We have an agenda in front of us this evening. Is there any addition or corrections to that, Dr.
No.
Carlson? I would entertain a motion to approve.
So moved. Second.
Motion made by Mr. Schmidt, seconded by Mr. Routh to approve the agenda as presented. Ms. Flatness, please.
Karen Flatness, aye. Joanne Maloney. Aye. Rich Mueller.
Aye. Aye.
Travis Routh.
Aye.
Neil Schlake.
Aye. Aye.
Dan Schmidt.
Aye.
Rick Schultz.
Aye. We are not back into the teaching and learning feature yet, and I do not believe we have any public comments, so we would move right into the superintendent's report. Dr. Carlson, please.
Thank you. Just emphasizing just a couple things, a fairly short report right now. If you haven't, you still have time to set a check-in with me next week if you haven't, so Ms. Colson would be happy to help you. And then just the construction update, I again tried to keep you updated on some changes, but I know that a couple of you have been around on some tours and a couple of you are coming in this week. So things are progressing, and look forward to, I was over today looking at the elementary office and things are looking very nice. And of course there's, if you've done a construction project at your own home, there's things that you may notice, and we're trying to do our best at following up and saying, now, wasn't this supposed to be like this, and so on. So we're doing that as well. So anyway, I don't have anything else to really take time unless you have questions. You have some reports, also buildings, but if you have any questions on the reports, be happy to respond at this time. Yes, thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Carlson. Any board member comments this evening? If not, the information and communications, we will be continuing, well, we actually have this scheduled, is that accurate for the elementary school next?
Yeah, we'll have to, I apologize for this, we'll have to double check that technology-wise, we can do that there. So we might want to say tentative.
Okay.
Our plan is, the only reason why, first of all, we haven't been is because of the construction.
Right.
So we hope to, but it will depend on the technology piece.
Understood, so keep posted on, but we will have a board meeting Monday, September 21st at 6:30 somewhere within the district. So keep posted on that. With that, we'll move into our consent agenda items, and I would like Dr. Carlson to introduce those, please.
Okay, we have minutes from the July board meeting, July 20th board meeting. You have bills of $1,934,484.29. We have donations. We have two donations, one from Land O'Lakes to our FFA in the amount of $1,000, and from our PTO to the Seesaw at the elementary for $2,145. So thank you to those two donors. It's that time that we have sought bids for our garbage and recycling. And so in your consent, you have a recommendation to award the bid to Waste Management, who is, again, who we are currently with, for both trash and recycling services. The agreement is for 3 years, and there's some minor differences in how we got the quotes, and so that's why the pricing is very comparable, very similar to the current. We did have one other quote from Thompson Sanitation, so you have that in your packet. Snow removal bids. We received one quote for the Ellendale sites and one for the New Richland sites. So again, the recommendation would be to award the Ellendale sites to Dover Steam Snow Removal and to Josh Moen Snow Removal for the New Richland sites. Those have been for the last 2 years, those have been who have taken care of both sites for us. We have been doing this on 2-year agreements. Under workforce, you have a few resignations that we want to bring attention to. Fabiola Swenson Mendoza, who's been a secondary paraprofessional and also working with ELL as far as tutoring and assisting there. Larry Jensen, bus driver, and we just thank Larry for his years of service. And then Kara Kale in our 3- and 4-year-old preschool program. And so we thank all 3 of them for their service to the district. Mr. Nick Jensen, you have a contract renewal. Mr. Jensen is our assistant with our technologies. And then also a year ago, he started to be the scheduler for our bus trips, our co-curricular, extracurricular trips. And so this would be his 2nd year of doing that. And so you have the agreement there as far as the hours and the pay rate. You also have the annual, this is a little bit after the fact, which has happened in the past. For the summer, so this would be for summer 2020, the summer occupational, the OT therapy agreement through the Waseca Public Schools. Also annually, as you know, we work through Waseca Public Schools for a number of services, and especially in the special education area. And so in your packet, you have the purchase of service agreements and we've listed those. It includes the administration, the autism, third-party billing consultation, PT and OT services for the school year, for the 2020-2021 school year. Under student achievement, we put the device handbook for this coming year under the consent because really there's no changes. And so that's why it sits in the consent agenda versus the other building handbooks, the student handbooks, which those will be presented later. And finally, 4 students from other districts would be planning to open and enroll in, choosing to attend our district, and 1 student choosing to open and roll out under online school. Okay, so I think we have worked through the items. Just a reminder, if you have any questions or wish to have the board consider something independently, then you would just request that item to be pulled out. And otherwise, there'd be a motion to accept the consent agenda as presented.
This is make a motion to approve. I'll second it.
Motion made by Mr. Mueller, seconded by Mr. Schlake to approve the consent agenda as presented. Ms. Flatness, could you do a roll call vote, please?
Karen Flatness, aye. Joanne Maloney.
Aye.
Rich Mueller.
Aye.
Travis Rao.
Aye.
Neil Schlegel.
Aye.
Dan Schmidt.
Aye.
Rick Schultz.
Aye. Motion carries. Recommended action here this evening, we are going to start with the 2020-21 school year learning plan. Dr. Carlson, please.
Okay. And I think if you guys want to move up there, so that we can move right into that when we get to that. I had just, as Mr. Schultz and I have been working on the agenda, I just double checked again. You know, we thought that the order of this tonight will present the school learning plan, the district plan, which includes the 2 building plans. Thought that the board would appreciate a review of that plan that includes those 3 models. Prior to which item number 2 then is to decide or determine how we start the school year. So that's the order, and what you will see as we start the learning plan is you're going to notice early on there's a paragraph that talks about how we're going to start the school year. So I want to be clear that, and I reviewed this with Mr. Schultz, that that's in there just as a placeholder. It doesn't, and when you consider approving these plans, that you would be doing so, not approving what model that we're starting with. You're approving the plans. And that will change depending on your action on the next agenda item tonight. I think once I bring this up, I'll point that out. I need my glasses for distance and I want to just try to enlarge this if I can. So, as most are aware, the state of Minnesota requires public school districts to publish, develop, draft, and publish your school learning plan for this school year. This is a process that has started, really picked up in mid to the end of June, once we started to have a little bit more guidance of how we go about what do we have to consider and put it into our plans. In June, early on, it called for addressing 3 different models or plans, type of learning models. The in-person, the hybrid, and then the distance. And so when we get through towards the end of this, Mr. Anderson and Mr. Bunn will go into more of the detail for each school building, those 3 plans. So right now, we have an introduction. Before we get there, we have an introduction that also includes a general overview of some of the components to this overall plan that you will also see perhaps duplicated in the building level plans. So just one more time, the concept with the in-person learning for all students, that's having students present every day And as we will talk more as well, then those safety guidelines are different or lessen to a degree, especially the distancing. The hybrid then you have things that you need to follow, and we'll talk more about that even in agenda item number 2 when we get to that. But this is really when we pay attention to the distancing and the building capacity. And the distance learning is then the most restrictive model where all students are learning remotely from home, or at least not in the school building. So what we do, we're introducing, we provide a link to the Minnesota, the main plan state, the Safe Learning Plan, that really what it highlights, a number of things, but what the focus immediately will be next on the agenda is what learning model do we begin the school year with? And so what they identify is 5 different models. And you can see that they start with the least restrictive, going up to the most restrictive, which would be the distance learning for all model. So as we go through that, and we will get more into even the parameters of how you decide that, we wanted to introduce that early in this document. This paragraph talks about, again, how do we start the school year? And this is what I was alluding to. While this is inserted in there right now, I would ask that as you consider approval of this document tonight, that it's not approving what it says there right now. That will come at the next agenda item. And we will modify that or keep it, whatever the decision ends up being. But we put throughout this document, you have a number of links. Some of it are links to other sites, state sites, other resources. Some are links to our own documents. I will, for example, we will talk more about this on the next agenda item, but here's an example. And I even gave, for those in attendance, you have a paper copy. We'll talk more about this later, but this is an example of a link that talks about, again, the case rate data and so on. Now, I'm just bringing that up as an example of how the link works. We have the executive order. Actually, you hit on that site, and I think that goes to the site. And so, so we introduced that early on in this document. So we just talk about some of the key ideas in developing this plan, to the point that as you read through the plan, you will find that it begins with information relevant to both school buildings, including, and we talk about beliefs, our guiding beliefs. We talk about general school building guidelines and expectations. Food service and transportation are those things that we highlight before we even get into the specific school plans. We just talk a little bit about the hybrid model and what that in general looks like with the A, B each day, or how students are divided into 2 groups. We mentioned about full-time distance learning. This is important to know that regardless if we are in hybrid or even in person, we will offer a full-time distance learning option for any family that believes that that is best for their child. I'm not going to go paragraph by paragraph. It just kind of closes by just thanking and just acknowledging the input and the involvement, and then also inviting them to invite our families to make sure that they're contacting us for any questions. So as we scroll through this, now that was the introduction. So now we get into the plan, and I'm just going to scroll down. Here's our guiding principles and beliefs. We put safety first. We want to be transparent in all that we are doing and as timely as we can. Decisions are based, again, on best practices, the data, the science, and we need to be deliberate and decisive in our decision making as best as we can for all involved. So now we get into just a general list of, and there isn't necessarily a particular order, although I guess when you do this, you might look at I don't want anybody to think that this is most important, but I think that the health issue, since safety first, I think our attention and our interest goes there in many ways. And so we start talking about student health monitoring and the general procedure. What you will find in our plans is that when it comes to screening, we are not planning to screen and take temperature of students as they enter the school building. That guidance has changed over the summer time, and we follow the CDC and the MDH recommendations on that. That's still a choice, though. Any school can do it, and there are some that are, but in our case, we feel it's most important that we work closely with our parents and families, and that we are making sure that they are doing their part in screening their child every day in the morning. So one of the things that we have developed through this process is a safety protocol, parent acknowledgement. And the idea behind this is to, again, ask, encourage, look for the parent to, first of all, be aware. So it's an informational item, it's an informational communication first. And so we give some expectations, I guess, and some general things that we are looking for. I want to point out that the School District Board Policy 808 is highlighted and not linked here. We will hold off until September, and we will then end up linking it there, because you have a first reading of that tonight. So when it comes to the masking board policy. So some general expectations and things that we know we want in place. We give some, again, additional information and help where parents can go for more information as far as their screening and what they need to do as far as caring for their child. So then we get down to really asking the parent to acknowledge that, to make sure to screen their child. Under our masking, the expectation, the governor's executive order, to expect their child to wear a mask. And again, when we say that, all the exemptions that are in place through the executive order are obviously included in that. The regularly washing, sanitizing hands, just encouraging that. And then making sure that they're communicating with us in our health office confidentially about any issues that their child may be having.
Did it say we're maintaining 6 feet social distancing in all scenarios? And up above? Because that's not true under the in-person, is it? If it says maintaining social distancing of at least 6 feet when in school buildings. I don't know what the intro paragraph says.
Yeah, my delay here is just thinking we had in different places, might be a good catch, Ms. Maloney. What we've tried to do in different places is depending on the learning model.
Yeah,
So,
a little caveat there. would
so
be
thank
helpful.
you. Yeah.
I mean, that's something that changed over the summer, so I can see how that,
You know, under the in-person, while it's not required, there still is the general as much as we can. So Will, thank you, Will. Just, these are the things that, as you consider adopting or approving the overall plan tonight, things will continue to be tweaked and changed, whether it's guidance, whether it's things like this, that there's input or, that's what will happen. And so, so just know that. Just know that as you adopt this. And so thank you for that. We'll make a note and we'll work on that. So that's it here. The parent, what we're trying to do is this would be a Google form where the parent then can do an electronic signature, just no paper. And then that'll make it easier even on documenting here. We've talked about what if parents don't sign this. I think our first step is we'll look at who hasn't signed it after a period of time, and then we'll reach out to them and have that conversation. Was this, just haven't gotten around to it? We might send out an email reminder or something first, and then at some point we'll try to drill down and say, we haven't gotten this from you yet, and have that conversation. But I have to say, the expectation, I'll go and highlight the masking piece. You'll see that even when we get to the board policy. We're very serious about this. Our expectations are that that will be done. And when I say that, obviously that's taken into account. We will obviously follow the exemptions and work with families who are impacted by that. So I wanted to highlight that piece of the plan. Just some ongoing, again, hopefully helpful resources for staff and families as they go through this document. The classroom layout, there's a section, again, this is general, and so like the first bullet, we talk about following the CDC and MDH guidelines. We talk about the 6-foot distancing if in the hybrid learning model. So we work, how is that looking in the classroom? We get into a reminder of masks. You're going to see that in several different places. And just how we're designing those spaces. And each space will be different. The sanitizing of hands, we are looking in general, all of us, not just students, but all of us. When we enter a space, classroom, we're sanitizing. And then our hands. And then before we leave that space, we're sanitizing our hands. So, and Mr. Anderson, Mr. Bunn may talk more specifically about that, but in general, that's what we are expecting. Always, some of these things we're not going to truly know until we're there and see. They're working hard at the building level on the best preparations as possible to minimize the amount of traffic. whether it's staggered times, what it might be. So at some point, especially with our older students, there's just going to have to be an understanding. We're going to keep that flow one way on the right side and on the left side, coming in the opposite direction. I think that, I don't think we have the luxury of having one-way hallways. But we're going to try to do the best we can and keep everybody mindful, even in the hallway, as you're walking or following, try to maintain the distancing as best as we can. Especially in the secondary school, and Mr. Budd may talk more about backpacks and lockers and how that's being worked out. Restrooms, we know that that's a place that we need to be cleaning frequently throughout the day, as well as any other high touch points throughout the building. And so we're working on that. Under a hybrid, for example, we'll be looking at, if we, in theory, have half of our students in the building, are there ways that we can minimize the number of, whether restrooms, stalls, that type of thing, available at any time. So we will always actually make sure we're meeting code on that, but we're just trying to limit the number of high touch points. I know I'm not getting everything here, but dining and cafeteria, that'll be another area that we want to make sure that we have it well marked and that we have the expectations of distancing and spread out as you eat. We're going to have, I think, a combination of hot, like we've had in the past, and whether or not there's different areas of what meal you have, just how are we making sure that we have students spaced out during that time. I don't think we've had to go to yet of adding lunches, but we'll see. Otherwise, general building access, it's our plan to really limit visitors into the building beyond the office. And that right now, that includes parents. And so I know the two buildings are working on that, but that's just something that we feel needs to, at least to get us started, we need to be really limiting the people other than staff and students into the building. So a link, that's our same safety protocol that we've had. We will see, we continue to, but you'll see that posted at the entrance and so on. We will look at that. We have started to look at that, see if it's still, we need to tweak that or change that. But in general, there will be the same expectations. Daily schedule. Again, some of this will be duplicated by the specific plans. I think in general, trying to maintain some do I say normalcy as far as schedule and so on, as far as the school day. So right now, we're not looking at this point of starting at a different time the school day or ending the school day at a different time. What happens in between those will be perhaps tweaked. But students, we're not looking at, it's generally that 8:30, 3:05 kind of time. You'll see the last bullet of the daily schedule, field trips and assemblies will be discontinued until further notice. We have a section on, we talked about building signage. We've ordered signage, we're making signage. We're hoping, we should be all prepared for that. And so it will look, we have signage for floors, distancing signage, and so on. Water fountains, we're looking at only having them available for the bottles. And Many of the fountains, we've been able to make progress on that over the last few years. And there's our reminder of kind of stay to the right when you're passing the hallway, another reminder. The building cleaning and sanitation, that's so important, and I want to thank our lead custodians. We've had a number of work sessions, and that continues though to be a work in progress. It's going to be, we have protocols in place. So for example, we're going to, classroom doors will all be open. What we're going to try to do is minimize the number of those high touch points that you see throughout the school building. And so classroom doors will be open, restroom doors will be blocked open, and so we can just have more of a touchless environment as best as we can. And then that frequent cleaning throughout the school day. So there's much that's being worked on in the area of the general cleaning and sanitizing. Another piece about child nutrition and food service, one of the things most notable perhaps is we are, for the first quarter, moving to all disposable. Trays, utensils, and everything right now. And we're just going to do that so we're not having the exchange back and forth of the trays and the silverware to wash. But we're going to examine that further. And so that's been a recommendation that we have seen. Otherwise, the breakfast and lunch, we're going to try to keep that in place with hot lunch and so on. One of the things here that's noted that on an A-B schedule under a hybrid, thought through about students then being home the next day. So I think especially Mr. Bunn and that group and our food service, as well as, well, if we're hybrid, depending on whenever we're in a hybrid, you're going to have half the students home the next day. So it'll be important. What we're trying to do is make sure they can leave school at the end of the day when they're here with their meals for the next day.
So if they leave on Friday, they bring home food for Monday?
Yes. If I'm in school on Friday, if I heard you correctly, yes, yep, and we did that over the summer as well.
Okay.
We distributed on Fridays for the next Monday, especially for the next Monday morning breakfast, at least. Yep. Transportation, that is a continual work. Our drivers have been very helpful in the past 6 weeks at least of looking at different scenarios and how can we make this work. And that guidance has changed as well over the summer. First we're following guidance of 6-foot distancing on buses, and we had a plan, but now that has lessened according to the CDC guidance to a degree. And so we still are operating under a capacity limit. And so, so anyway, continually working through that, and so I want to acknowledge our drivers with that. So we just talk about what drivers will be doing and what families should be expected to do, and students. And some of those things are just repeated again with what the expectations on that parent acknowledgement form might say. Okay, so we finally get down to the school-specific plans, and what I'm going to try to do is kind of scroll as each of them talk through these. So we will first look at the elementary school learning plan. So
first of all-
Anyway, Mr. Anderson, go ahead.
First of all, we've had several people from the building that have been working together as a return to school committee since June. Dina Summer, Wendy Schultz, Kathy Meyer, Sarah Erke, and our health nurse, Donna Olson, have all been a part of creating this plan for our building. And as Dr. Carlson said, just a quick review, in person for us at the elementary means all students and staff are back. And during our instructional times and times within our building, our goal is to create as much space between one another as is feasible during the day, but as he mentioned, not held strictly to enforcing the 6 feet of social distancing during that primary instructional time in the classroom. With the hybrid, we do limit the overall number of people. We're at 50% maximum occupancy, and we've spaced this out into classrooms so we know what it's going to look like. Social distancing with at least 6 feet must occur at all times, and also our transportation is at 50% with this. The hybrid plan does include arrangements for meals and also school materials. At the elementary, our plan is to have our students take their devices home on those days that they're working at home with the hybrid model. Distance learning, we continue to provide for that appropriate grade level instruction and will consist of activities best suited to those available for our students at home. And as always, with any of these models, our focus will continue to be on those academic standards, which will present us with a bit of a challenge because we will have some catch-up that will need to take place because of those standards that we didn't get to last spring, but also being responsible for starting those standards right away in the fall. And so during the workshop week, we have someone coming in, scheduled to come in to help us with that process of planning for that vertically. Just a few key safety items. We are providing masks and face shields for staff. We will also have disposable masks available for those students who have forgotten theirs at home, but masks are required by everyone in our building and also on the buses as well. Dr. Carlson talked about that parent acknowledgement that will be requested of families as well. And the fact that our plan at this time doesn't include screening everyone upon entering the building, but relying heavily on our parents to help support us with that before their children leave for school. An adjustment for us at the elementary will be no parents or visitors allowed beyond the office reception area. We realize that that's a significant change for us in the elementary. I plan to send out a video to families next week that will have several things that we will talk about, and this will be one of them. But our expectation will be that students are dropped off and picked up outside of school in the designated areas that we have at the elementary. This also includes that any parent or retired senior volunteers, they will not be actively involved with students until these restrictions are lifted. We have ordered signs. Visuals are a great thing for elementary students, and so we have several of them marking social distancing X's on the floor, signs in our restrooms as to what we expect, signs in our hallways, and signs for our classrooms. Dr. Carlson talked about the water fountains. For us at the elementary, we do have 2 bottle filling stations, and our custodian has been working on the remaining fountains. We will just turn off at this time. Doors are open. Students and staff are really going to hit the hand washing procedures throughout the day. In most of our elementary classrooms, we also have the gift of having sinks in many of those rooms, so that we looked at that will assist us greatly with that. Our custodians have developed a detailed cleaning and sanitizing schedule for the building, beginning right away at 8:30, based on when teachers have their specials, going into those classrooms at that time. Restroom cleaning schedules are also in there, and it's a solid, aggressive schedule for the entire day. I've talked about spreading out desks and furniture. Just also a reminder for the hybrid model, we do have an attendance calendar that will be going out for that AB student list and will be distributed to families. With the cafeteria, if we're in person, we're going to do everything we can to distance students as much as possible, stagger those current lunch shifts by possibly a few minutes. As students finish, likely sending them out to recess, which we will continue to have recess, which will help ease the number of students in the cafeteria at that time. Hybrid model, it's 6 feet of social distancing with everyone facing the same direction. Our playground equipment we plan to use. We will sanitize a few times a day, but we also are going to have more of a structured recess time at the elementary. We have our playground equipment, which will be one area. Then we have an area a grassy area where kids have played football in the past. We'll have a pair there with somewhat of a structured activity, and then we'll have another activity up by the building. So the kids will need to choose before they go out, and they'll need to commit to that one activity throughout the day to kind of help us space out our students, but then also keep them committed to the one activity and not running back and forth. So that's our playground plan. We do have an isolation room established for those students who become ill and are awaiting pickup from a family member, and that will be monitored by our school nurse and office staff. With the distance learning model, the setup for that will, teachers will post activities, directions, and reminders, and our return to school team has done a lot with focusing on making the Seesaw platform that we used last spring much better. And we're going to be more consistent so that families know as a school, here's an expectation for the day. Even those assignments and activities may be a bit more detailed, but we continue to refine that. Morning meetings will still continue with the distance learning model. Resources at home and school, devices will be going home. Staff will continue to communicate guidelines and expectations. Transportation, in person, continues pretty much as it was prior to the spring of 2019. Students, buses will be sanitized after our kids are dropped off, masks required. As Dr. Carlson said, transportation for a hybrid model is at that 50% occupancy, and all those sanitizing things are still in place. We believe that with our parents, that acknowledgement of safety protocol is extremely important. We will need their help. We'll expect their help to make sure that their students are sent to school with what they need, which includes face masks and anything else that they need for their learning. Our parents have started to let us know if they choose to have their child involved in distance learning rather than the in-person or the hybrid model. We'll continue to make sure our parents have their most current updated personal information and make sure that they're clear on checking communications from teachers in the school. Dr. Carlson talked about the masks. For our students on that in-person learning day, They're going to participate in all the activities. They're going to be fully engaged. Classroom instruction will be key, as it always is on a hybrid learning day. Same thing. They'll participate in meetings or activities and instruction if they've been scheduled. But at the elementary, likely a large part of that hybrid day will be time to practice, reflect, extend, and review that instruction that took place on that in-person day while they were at school. A big thing for us at the elementary, and I see this taking probably several weeks, will be training. We have many areas for our elementary students where we will just need to spend a great deal of time letting them know, here's what happens. Things that you may not think of, like using our water bottle, entering and exiting the building with those social distancing squares that are on the floor. Social distancing, what does that look like? What does it mean? And then our cafeteria, but also information too about the 3 different models. I think it's important that our kids understand what the in-person means and looks like, what the hybrid means and looks like, and distance learning, and how distance learning will be even a little bit different for our students than it was this last spring. So those are the highlights that I wanted to share with the elementary.
Thank you. Maybe we take questions for now, and I apologize. I've tried to scroll and keep there, but I know I haven't done a perfect job on that. But maybe we want you to take questions or comments?
I wonder, maybe before that, if I could just jump back in with the addendum.
Oh, yes. Yep.
If we were to be in a hybrid model, we've had a great deal of discussion at the elementary, and we feel it's extremely important that even though the hybrid model is an every other day programming model, we wanted to do everything we could possible to see, is there a chance we can bring in our youngest learners every day and still follow protocol and social distancing. And so we've come up with a plan for our bridges and kindergarten students where we feel we can do that and still follow all of those requirements and expectations. I will let you, on your own, read through our beliefs. You're probably very familiar with them already. But our plan will include the social distancing of 6 feet, facilities at 50%, transportation at 50%, and sufficient staffing levels. Our Bridges classroom, just naturally, right now at this point, is at a number where we will be able to appropriately social distance and maybe even possibly another individual could be brought into that Bridges program. In our kindergarten classrooms, even though they'd be under that hybrid model as a school, we're going to bring them in every day. They will attend school every day with social distancing. And for the first 2.5 weeks, however, the kindergarten students will be attending school following the A-B schedule. Our teachers believe very strongly that it's important to establish that relationship and for them to get to know their students and for the student to become very comfortable with them. So the first 2 weeks will be the A-B schedule, and then beginning on Monday, September 28th, and moving forward, all kindergarten students will attend every day. The classes are divided into an A-B list. The classroom teacher will have, let's say, the A group, and a paraprofessional will have the other group in a classroom separate from the group that the classroom teacher has. Classroom teacher will be doing core instruction in all of the areas required of them for a kindergarten classroom. That paraprofessional, the students that she has, will be supporting and extending and enriching and practicing that core instruction. Throughout the day, those groups will move back and forth. Whether it's an hour and a half, after an hour and a half, then they switch groups. The classroom teacher will have the other group and work with those students, and the paraprofessional will continue some of those same activities with the other group. So they will rotate back and forth. We've identified classrooms for this to happen with very minor adjustments to other programming. We're going to equally balance that schedule so that one group isn't getting more instruction from the classroom teacher than the other. All kindergarten students are going to attend their specials together. At the elementary, that means their computer and their music, and we're able to do that in our music room, which is quite large, and in our media center. So we'll be able to follow all protocol and bring them all together for the specials. Likely that paraprofessional will attend with them. We'll be able to have them eat lunch together. We possibly may be setting up some additional tables in half of our gymnasium if we need that. We haven't been able to get into the kitchen, the cafeteria area due to construction, but we're going to double check that. We have 3 paraprofessionals who've been identified as kindergarten paraprofessionals for this plan, and this will be their day. And this was a give and take. That's we had to do some compromising, but we're confident that this is what we need to do for our youngest learners. And then we've built in a common preparation time because there will be a need for those teachers and that paraprofessional to talk daily on a regular basis. And so we have some time at the end of the day. Okay.
Any general questions for Mr. Anderson?
That every other day for kindergarten was only in the hybrid model, correct? I mean, if we were to go in person out of the start, they're coming every day, right?
I think they
And that's-
normally do that, don't they?
Right.
They normally go every other day to start, just to get them active.
We have,
Okay,
you know,
so
and we.
I just wanted that
Yeah,
cleared
and
up.
we've shortened that. I mean, if everything were as usual, what would happen is that very first week, you know, we have
Okay.
day 1 on Tuesday.
Okay.
And then half the group would come on Wednesday, half the group would come on Thursday, everybody would come on Friday.
Okay.
If things were as usual.
Okay.
But with this, we're looking at
In the
2 weeks and a
hybrid
couple days.
model. But if we were to decide to go in person in the
Yep.
elementary,
Yep.
what would you would see that first week
Yeah, just that.
staggering like
Yep,
you
they
just
would
said,
have
but
one.
the second week they would all be
Yep.
coming then? Okay.
Yep, Group A would have 1 day on their own, Group B
Right.
1 day on their own,
Fair
coming
enough.
together on Friday. Yep.
Appreciate that, thank you. I've been here long enough to remember back when we went till MEA or maybe even
It was
Yep.
Thanksgiving.
and then we.
Thanksgiving one, yes,
Right, so,
and then it was MEA, and then it
right.
kinda got like 2 weeks maybe, or right off the
Sure.
bat, I think how they.
So now for us to go every day in the elementary, you would have to be able to maintain your social distancing thing, right? Isn't that what you researched? We couldn't figure out a way to keep them social distance so that even, no matter what the levels are. Is that correct, or didn't I understand that right? Because I know some other schools are gonna have.
Yes, and they have, in my understanding, they are able to do that because they have found space
Right.
to bring everybody in and to yet have that social distancing within the classrooms. We have really looked at that, and we've struggled with finding a plan that would work, but we are able at least to begin a plan for our youngest learners. Bridges in kindergarten right now.
Has it been, what grades, obviously, Bridges and kindergarten are most important. But is it something that can be kind of evaluated, I suppose, as we go along? Maybe we can sneak in another grade or, you know.
I think we could, yeah, I mean, I think we can always be evaluating and looking for possibilities and making sure that we're using our space to the best that we can.
On an in-person, so let's say we send the elementary back on an in-person basis, recognizing we don't have to, as long as we're within the numbers, don't have to maintain 6-foot distancing. Are we still rearranging the classrooms?
Yeah, and this will be part of that training, and our committee felt strongly about that really, no matter what the model, we want to take the time and just act as though we're doing everything we can, especially in the in-person, to social distance as much as possible. So the classroom will likely be arranged. If there's group work, they'll probably be spread out rather than maybe at a table, typically working together. So.
And then how do the teachers teach in person and online? They're doing double shifts, so they have technology to do it all at once. How does that work?
Yeah, that's a very good question, and we've discussed that at length, and we're going to continue to discuss that on Wednesday at a staff meeting. We've had some suggestions that have been presented from that return to work, return to school.
Accurately stated, right? Get to work.
Committee, but we're also looking to it, do we have another licensed staff member who could become the distance learning teacher for those students who families have selected distance learning? And so, and even, within our committee, there, some are very supportive of that. Others are just concerned with, but those are my kids, and if they come back, they'll be coming back to me, and just the communication piece between that teacher, the distance learning teacher, and the homeroom teacher. So we are working to come up with roadblocks, but also solutions as a staff on Wednesday for that. It's a concern, I know.
I have a question in regards to the temperature thing. If some kids' parents are not home when they go to school and they feel fine that night, or they simply forget, for all the good protocol we're going through during the school, is that a huge undertask to take temperatures and check for masks, especially the first couple of weeks?
My belief is, yes, it's a large task, the staffing of that, but then also depending on your model, the distancing, for example, kids coming off a bus, making sure that we distance them appropriately before they get checked. And so it would be challenging to facilitate. Not saying it couldn't be done, but it would be challenging.
Mr. Slake, we've followed this closely, and the guidance and how this has changed as far as especially even, not just general screening, but temperature taking and so on. And so we've been following this as most schools have. And I want to be careful of not sharing opinions versus facts here, but whether or not, other than the temperature checking, the rest of the screening pretty much is self-reporting. Mm-hmm. And so whether or not we do it here or do it at home, so that piece we've come to realize that, to have lines and waiting, the temperature checking, again, others would be better to speak to that than I, but what we've followed the guidance is that other symptoms on that checklist are going to be more of the valid symptoms than even temperature checking, the temperatures. And I know, so anyway, we have followed that, and we just think right now we're gonna follow that guidance and that I think many schools are now going to do too. So, but we will certainly still, we'll follow it closely.
This is Rich. I don't know who wants to take this one. I know right now kids can basically come in this building for different doors. Are we going to restrict them to one entrance, or can they come in wherever they want to?
Typically for us at the elementary, we basically have 2 points of entrance in the morning. We have the doors where our students who are bused, they enter through one set of doors there, and then at the back of our building, our student drop-off is the other point of entrance.
We have 2 entrances basically that are used as well. One out front by the flagpoles, which is the bus drop-off, and the drivers more down toward the athletic entrance.
And they can come in either entrance.
Yeah, getting everybody through one bottleneck isn't exactly the greatest scenario either.
I have to admit, I have concerns about the whole temperature taking thing. You know, just, it gives me great pause, knowing that in more regular times, there's a lot of students that come to school sick. You know, to think that they're going to be properly monitored or screened at home, I think is quite a leap of faith that I don't necessarily have in everyone.
I would question too, though, that just some thoughts that we've talked through. We don't want to mislead anybody that our temperature check and so on is a foolproof that it's going to result in. So it's yeah. But thank you for the, yeah.
No, and Joanne, I agree. That's what I take the responsibility of the school district, whether it's the flu or, I mean, it's getting done, and it's not a forgotten thing, and all it takes is once a night. That's just my biosecurity thing for all the things we're doing in the school. So that's where that's my fear too.
And it's not necessarily even saying parents send their kids knowingly to school sick. You know, it's that teenager who slept too late and running out the door, and you don't even have a chance to look her in the eyes, let alone talk to her about anything or take a temperature check. It's just all sorts of different situations.
You certainly have an opportunity to come back. Let's, Mr. Bunn, I'll bring up the hybrid.
All right, we have 3 separate documents. First of all, I want to thank Joni Olson, Missy Dunn, Mark Kruger, Mark Dolmeyer for their help in working. Also, with the creation of the AB lists, Terry Corman and Liz Sternagel with some of the scheduling, just amazing. You want to talk about trying to build an airplane midair? We're about to. I'll try to mention things that maybe are a little different, because a lot of the things that both Dale and Doug have said, you know, signage, okay, we definitely are going to have it. The committee talked about the last time, the stay on the right side of the street, if you will, and some tape and things that we can put down to encourage that. Obviously, an open house seems pretty counterintuitive with the times, and so typically that's been a time when we've been able to distribute devices. We have a plan with Angie to get that done the first couple days of school. The way we'll do it with the AB scenario is that we'll repeat, day one, if you will, the first 2 days of school. We're going to have staff work on some videos to help, as Doug talked about, with some of that teaching as well, social distancing, things of that nature. We won't run necessarily Panther time except for that first day. Typically the first day we all come back, we go in the gym, we play some music, we get all fired up. I tell them a few fun things about some rules and then say, hey, have a nice day, and then they kind of move on. We won't be able to do that, so we're going to take a different venue. Conferences, we're pretty concerned that face-to-face conferences might be difficult, so we may look to do those via Google Meets, possibly 2 days in October, and then we would just eliminate the open house. As when we created the A-B list, we started, and I think both these guys discussed it, we started with transportation, and then we moved to family cohorts, and then we moved out after that as well. So you can tell that it wasn't just A through whatever is this A. It doesn't necessarily work that way. Some schools are doing that. We have the same thing with visitors, not really wanting a lot of folks in just to help reduce the exposure or potential exposure. Mr. Domeyer is the king of junior high recess, and he's on right now, I know he is, and he is super excited about going outside and still doing some of those things that we have done, but we'll have to kind of clean the equipment at the end. It's a little problematic if there's inclement weather. We're just going to have to kind of sit in the commons area, which is not, again, the greatest, but having 250, or well, it wouldn't even be that many because of AB, but having that many junior high kids in the middle school gym at one time, that's not going to work. So we already talked about field trips, volunteers, screening. Our grading policies will kind of go back to the way that they were prior to COVID-19. Unless something happens and we get directed otherwise by the Department of Education. We're going to use Schoology again. We also, as a group, talked about some more expectations or things that staff can do, teachers can do to help not only kids but parents, so they're not trying to look all over the place and have 17 different folders and things like that, but more of a, put everything in the assignments at least that are assignments so it pulls up on the page. So we'll keep working with that. For folks that are choosing full-time distance learning, which I know Mr. Schultz, you asked in the committee meeting, how many people or how many students are we talking about? It is roughly about 10.5% in both of us. So,
Sure. Thank you.
Yep. If they are choosing distance learning, we're expecting them to attend virtually every day, every hour, just like they were here. We feel that the instruction, this is different, and you'll see it later on, than the spring. The spring we had to survive. Now we're talking about instruction and making sure students get the amount of instruction, the standards that are covered, things of that nature. Because we may stagger the passing times a touch, we're going to turn off likely the bells. We're going to allow backpacks, which we haven't typically done. But we feel we're trying to limit the amount of access to, one, congregating down in the locker area, and two, just using the lockers. They still might need to put a jacket or boots or something as we move forward in those lockers, but not nearly as much as they have been in the past, where I got to run and get a tablet or whatever, pencil, that sort of thing. So backpacks they would carry with them. Teachers need to be in the hallways during the passing times to also help make sure that we're having the fish swim. And
Well, if you don't have bells, like, it's hard to make those fish swim, isn't it?
yep, you'd be surprised. One time at Prescott, we had the bells go off and stop working for about a week. It was excellent, actually. It was something about Pavlov's dogs, and when the bell rings, they get all excited. They just kind of naturally move, and it is what it is.
Good.
But we'll see. We're loosening up a little bit. Kids have lost a lot through this whole process, so we're looking at maybe, as long as you're doing the things that you need to do and acting appropriately, that we would open up the idea of letting them potentially wear hats. Yeah, it's
Be a big reward for some people.
That's a monumental shift.
Yeah.
So, but we get it. These kids, this hasn't been easy on anybody, but especially, our kids. Just, it's been really tough. Meal distribution, we'll work with that at the end of the day. Probably not so much changing of PE, which will kind of limit the activities and things that they will do, but obviously not using locker rooms, that sort of thing. They need to have water bottles. The next one's going to be a kind of a monumental shift as well. We're going to try to limit the bathroom use during passing times, because I can tell you what happens. 15, 20 of them go into the bathroom at one time, whether they're standing there waiting or whatever. So we're going to see how it goes, but work with the staff, and the students will have planners they'll ask to use the bathroom when they get to class. We'll just see how that goes. We'll say that. We're trying to limit the number of folks in the bathroom at one time when we do that, put some signage, that sort of thing. Masks, water bottles, these are some required supplies that we would like them to have. Backpack, recommended small bottle of sanitizer, something you can have. A few things, so when whether it's the distance learning kids or the kids that are on their off or on the opposite day, they're at home. they need to attend every hour. Now, a check-in might be determined by teacher, and I'll give you an example. So if I have Phi-Ed and I check in and Mr. Kruger says, okay, now little Johnny, you need to go do your 20-minute workout. I'm not going to stay on camera and do the 20-minute workout. I'm going to just do the 20-minute workout. So the check-in, may be somewhat determined by the teacher. Hey, keep the camera on and please be appropriately dressed. That's always good. And if there's a camera issue, you need to communicate with us so we can make sure that just can't be an excuse like it sometimes was in the spring. I'm going to skip ahead a little bit. We've told them to kind of keep their chargers at home. Well, now we're going to say you might want to bring your charger in your backpack each day, which is a little different. Just because, they may have some opportunity during PE where we can charge some of the devices. We're trying to cut down the use of paper and that sort of thing, so these things are going to get taxed a little bit more. And so we'll see what happens with that. Kids that end up being quarantined, we're going to want to make sure to encourage them to join the Google Meet. If they were sick themselves, if they're able to, to attend or watch a recorded class or something, we'll see how it goes. We talked and we have some parent expectations. One thing might be if they do need to help a younger sibling, maybe just kind of communicating with us a little bit, because that every hour, every day thing might become an obstacle. So we need to communicate. Although we want it to be this, we know there's no absolutes. Teachers, we're gonna have the desks marked, so you are, let's say, in hour 1 you sit in the black seat. When you go to hour 2, you sit in a red seat. So at the end of every hour, teacher will spray. Students potentially will wipe down their little area and move on to their merry way to the next class. That also, the reason why we're alternating, remember on hybrid, so about 15 kids are going to be in the room. So
So what, you putting stickers on seats or what?
yep, some sort of color coding or whatever. Students need to face the front of the classroom, and that's those were some of the CDC guidelines and things that came about. They need to record all the teaching sessions. We're gonna work through how this is all gonna work. So if I'm at home and Mr. Domeyer's up front teaching, we're gonna work through to make sure the technology, that if I'm at home, I can see the same things as what's going on in terms of instruction in the classroom, whether it's the use of a whiteboard or whatever. And for also simplicity's sake, putting students in the alpha order for seating. You'll say, well, they might sit by the same kid every hour. Well, not necessarily. They don't all have the same classes. Attendance and grading, like I said before, would be kind of the same as what we were doing prior to this. Due dates would kind of, be up to that. If folks are choosing full-time distance learning, they'd be the same as kids in the building. The bigger one, which with attending, if they were full-time distance learning, which we had a lot of kids that got jobs during the school day, that's going to be problematic when or if they were to choose full-time distance learning, because they need to be there every day, attend class. It's not the, wait till 10 o'clock at night, quick get it done before the 11 o'clock bell rings, at night, which is what we used last spring. So that's a little different. And then lastly, we have the same calendar. Mr. Domeyer helped us work through this and create the AB. So, yeah, that's hybrid. Questions?
I think, Mr. Bonnet, you have the other two models, but I think that there's so much of those that have already been covered, I think, when we reviewed it in the hybrid piece.
Correct.
In the comments, so
Yeah.
happy to go through as much of that as possible, but if so, we can.
We would, if we go, and I'll just mention a few things with.
You want me to bring up which one?
That's the right
Okay.
one. If we were to all be back, there's still some things that we would try to maintain. Cleaning after junior high recess. The cleaning we still think would definitely be important. So that, spraying the desk down at the end of each hour and wiping it down, that sort of thing, even though we're all back, we think that still might be very important, so we don't end up in having to change models again. We still may consider staggered passing periods, bathroom doors open, the main ones, not the ones where the kids go to the bathroom. Just thought I'd clarify. We'd still want them to have water bottles. I mean, some of the same different things that we would try to do, that would be in person, as the same as
That's for
hybrid.
both schools. That in person, the emphasis is going to continue to be on the safety protocol, procedures, cleaning, and so on. As much distancing as possible, but not, that's just being more sensitive to that. But
And the only thing I need to really kind of go over with, let's say you're one of the 10% that you would like full-time distance learning. There is, Dale kind of talked about that, 4 to 5 week type of commitment. We're kind of asking that we would get that sort of time frame. We do have kids in AB lists anyway, but you know how this is potentially gonna go. We don't want to one day be distance, next day hybrid or week or whatever. If, how should I say this, we were to have let's just leave it at, we would like to make sure that we have enough notice as well to make sure that we have transportation, we have everything set up, so when they come back, we can accommodate them. And again, with that, there's always going to be individual family scenarios that can be assessed, but one, we're looking for somewhat of a 4-week commitment, and 2, about a week to try and make sure that we got everything kind of ready to go, because we may have to balance some things out. We don't know what we're potentially getting into totally when you start working with schedules like that too. And I think everything else I've talked about.
Mr. Bond,
Yes, sir.
if we end up, I haven't read a lot about the distance learning piece of it, because I'm trying to put that out of my head, but that won't happen. But, if that does happen, is that still like a classroom, like the AB kids? Is that what it's gonna be for everybody then, where a teacher's instructing 9 to 9:45, or, you know, or is it like it was gonna be last spring, where you just get a workload and you do your work?
No, it would be more of a class schedule. More of like the Mondays that we did.
Yeah, okay.
And the teachers would be here in their building teaching the distance learning if we were completely distance learning?
Well,
Or would
that,
they be at home or have that option?
Dale, you want to field that one?
Yeah, that, I think that it still needs to be discussed. You know, there are some of us who, some of us who have participated on some of the legal seminars and things like that, that would suggest, I think the guidance from MDE would still say, the expectation would still say, if we're in a distance learning situation full-time, that we would still need to be sensitive to the idea that if work can be done remotely, we should be doing everything we can to make that happen. So, but they would have to meet our standards and everything, but it would be up to that employer. But I think the spirit or the intent is to still work with employees to see if there is work that can be done effectively at the same level remotely, we should try to make that happen. Yep. That's the best I can give tonight.
No, that's fair.
Yep.
The other thing I would say too is, and I think Doug would say the same thing, I don't want to speak for you, but we alluded to this earlier, these are what we have right now. There's, every time our committee meets, there's new things, there's also some things that we'll want to discuss as a staff. Example would be, you know, obviously we won't be, middle school lunch, we think we can make it work without too much issue. High school's a larger problem, and so, you know, we're having discussions, is there a spot that if you have cold lunch you want to go eat, you could go there, using different teachers' classrooms, using this area also. So, I mean, these are all going to be ongoing discussions as well to see what works the best.
You mentioned, you know, trying to cut down on paper for like the kids use and stuff. Will there be more of a push to do more of the Chromebook-based stuff to cut down on like the books that these kids are lugging around all day long too?
Yeah, well, some of them, so some of the books are new enough that we have online versions. Others, we won't get around it. You know, just because we don't have that luxury. We don't have the licenses for those. So it's a mixed bag.
I think we've all heard, because we read the paper and listen to the news, you know, what's going on with sports programs, and what about other activities? I mean, is there any possibility of having a band concert spaced out, virtual kind of thing? And what's going on with the music programs, for one?
Music is gonna go. Do I know what concerts are gonna look like? Absolutely not at this point.
But they haven't been totally shelved.
No.
I mean, high school at best can start hybrid, so you only have half the band there on any given day to begin with.
Right. And I know Mr. Ottstadt's been working on, he's been doing some seminars and some different things that talk about, you know, masking with being able to play and,
Oh, my.
yeah, so.
Yeah.
Wow.
Have to have percussion and A and flutes or B.
You gotta scrap the whole A/B list and start with the band.
You don't even want to know, the first time we talked about hybrid at secondary level, I'll be honest, I laughed. I'm like, there's no way we can make it work. And then as you get going and you get over that initial shock, like, yeah, this is probably really happening, figure it out, and lean on folks like the committee members, and it'll come together.
What about
It's
choir?
what's that?
How do they do choir?
Carefully,
Uh-huh.
carefully. That's a little bigger room though, remember.
Can we sing with
Hey,
masks
hey.
on?
Yeah.
Say, Dan, you had that calendar up with the days. It looks like kids are going all 5 days. I've heard of other districts that have, they're only going like 4 days, and then there's one day that, they're cleaning stuff being done. Did we look at something like that, or we just looking to what we're currently doing?
We've looked at that. We've looked at where you would go 2 days in a row, and logistically we felt every other day, every other Friday seemed to work the best. The other thing, and I know other districts, and it's not everybody either, but some are doing a day of cleaning, deep cleaning, but when you ask what that means, nobody can really answer it. If you're doing the things that you need to do, yeah, and we surveyed our staff as well, and this was predominantly the best scenario that folks chose. But when people start talking about what is, you know, deep cleaning, everybody kind of does this. So
Our goal is to do everything we can throughout the school day, and
yeah,
minimize the touch points and do is the cleaning throughout the school day. We'll have that ongoing general cleaning always until at night after the school day is over. So that's what we are have in place at this point.
I mean, you think back, did you ever have, unless you were in detention, did you ever have desks wiped off all that often? I mean, I think I found Rick Schultz's name on one of the desks when so it's a huge change.
It's a lot of information. And I think that I don't want to cut short any further questions. I just, again, acknowledge Mr. Anderson, Mr. Bond, and all the staff that have been involved with this. Continue to be. There's more work to be done. We're 3 weeks from the start, and we know that there's still a lot of detailed planning to go, and we will continue to be working on that. Yeah, I don't want to cut short questions. At some point, the hopeful goal here is to have the board consider and approve or adopt the plans that are in place at this point. But just a reminder again, although for those who are tuning in on YouTube as well, the approval of this plan at this point, even though it states in the paragraph at the start about how we start the year, that will be determined yet on a later action.
Well, Ms. Neal, I'd just like to comment on all the work you guys have done. It looks excellent. And my biggest fear is I just feel we have to be the sheriff, whether it's a temperature, making sure these kids have masks before they enter the building, for everything we're doing inside. I think we owe that too, so we don't let something slip through. And I'm not gonna fault any parent or any, it could be as staff as well, but I just think that as far as the security of coming into the building is my biggest thing. But I think I commend everybody. It's excellent.
Would there be a motion out there to approve the 2021 school year learning plan as presented?
So move.
Second.
Was that Mr. Mueller on the second? I apologize.
That is correct.
Thank you.
Yep.
Motion made by Mr. Schlake, seconded by Mr. Mueller to approve the 2021 school year learning plan as presented. Ms. Flatness?
Karen Flatness, aye. Joanne Maloney.
Aye.
Rich Mueller.
Aye.
Travis Ralph.
Aye.
Neil Schleich.
Aye.
Dan Schmidt.
Aye.
Rick Schultz.
Aye. Now we will move into what Dr. Carlson has talked about being the beginning of the school year for each school. A PowerPoint presentation he's going to start with. So Dr. Carlson.
Thank you. So also tonight, yes, the board is asked to consider and determine how we start the school year. I'll probably likely exchange it says base learning model. And so what we mean by base learning model is the same thing as what learning model are we going to start the school year out with. So in different sources, you'll see that identified as the base learning model. We've gone through, you've heard the plans for the two school buildings specifically and for the district in those three scenarios. And so that's kind of that's an important piece to understand what those are. Not that long ago, when the guidance came out with the executive order on the safe learning plan of the state, a number of things were identified of how do you move forward in determining the base learning plan. And one of the things that was in the guidance to do was to form either an incident command team or an advisory council to assist in making this decision, offering a recommendation if the district to move forward to the school board, and so on. There was, and in fairness to this group, again, I want to acknowledge and thank, it was a very tight, short timeline to do this, within not even a week, basically. And so there was effort on several to put a group together, and so I thank the principals for, we kind of divided up and got a group together. I thank Mr. Schultz and Ms. Flatness for being part of this group. They met twice, but the purpose, as outlined in the Safe Learning Plan by the state, was to assist in determining the base learning model to begin the school year. The group met on August 6th. I think what they hope that a decision will be made. We'll get more into the case rate data that we are to use as the primary data point in our decision. And at that time, that 14-day period, which is lagging data by almost up to 2 weeks, was sitting at about 20.2 on the day we met it. And later it went up to 20.7 about. And so the decision of that group was to reconvene. And they did so last Thursday, looked at the weekly publication of that data that comes out later morning on Thursdays. And so based on that, there was a decision that came out of that group to consider in-person learning for the elementary and hybrid learning for secondary. And the data piece that supported that, or they looked at for that decision, was last Thursday, the case rate data, 18.8 for Waseca County. And that, again, that was published last Thursday for the time period of July 19th through August 1. Come on here. You'll see the variety of the members that have, again, in a very short period of time, were willing to spend time and be part of this process. We're going to see if the links work here. I think I'm going to, we've referenced the Safe Learning Plan. If need be, I'm happy to bring that up. That was the main document that is really guiding school districts of how to, first of all, go about determining the plan that you are going to start the school year out with. I had referenced that case rate data number, and if I can just get that cursor. So right away in the Safe Learning Plan, they talk about in the guidance and the requirements that we really, this is what we utilize to make the decision on as far as the case data of the positive test data throughout the state, but county specific. And so the next slide we'll go into is the actual 5 different learning parameters. But you can see that the range of the case data, the case rate for each of those parameters, or they say policy option, but it's the learning model parameters. So then you can look at the different counties when we scroll down, and you can see to the farthest to the right, you see 719 through 81. That means this data point is referencing that 14-day period. So it's lagging data. We're a school district that is in 3 different counties. And so the question has been, how do we look at all 3 counties and so on? Yes, we do. But the guidance has been consistently so far looking at you should focus your decision on the county with the highest case rate. In our case, not down to the specific percent, but in general, we're a county where our student population is somewhat evenly spread. We're a school district across the 3 counties. We are highest in Waseca County as far as our student population. But also we're that 30%-ish in both Steele and Freeborn. So we're more evenly spread than other school districts that are in multiple counties might end up being. So we look at each of the counties, and as we go down, I already passed it, you can see as far as Freeborn, again in that 8.19, and we'll come down to Steele. Steele at 12.0, and then we end up with Waseca at the 18.08. If you just take Waseca and you walk back, that first time that the advisory council met, that was the number that they were looking at. And this is lagging data, so it goes back almost 2 weeks. And we get this weekly, those time periods. So here again are those learning model parameters. And you see it's 0 to 9. Technically, you would say 0 and up to anything less than 10. And so you can see those different ranges. And so if you took that last number, 18.8, I think this is what the advisory council was staring at, looking at, well, in-person and so on for the elementary, hybrid for secondary. Now there's a slide that didn't make it here. I've been searching for it. All right, we will have to, I just talked through this. I had a slide where it shows how some of us have been projecting or estimating, looking out. And so if you go on some different resources, the state resource MDH or Waseca County, you can see the daily case rate. So if you go in Waseca County, for example, they'll have the daily case rate, and I just want to make sure, yeah, I don't know what happened to it, sorry, apologize for that. And so it also talks about the confirmed lab cases. So some of the methodology to project ahead. Yeah, I had, thank you. That's not it, but that's all right. Some of the methodology of trying to project ahead, because otherwise this is what we have, and this is what we have to make the decision off of. But some of the questions that have been asked, can we use those new cases that maybe are not confirmed yet in looking at least trends or where we may end up? And so what you do, you can simply take a 14-day period, add up the new cases, and then for Waseca County, the divisor that we've been using, that I've been using, is about 1.86 for a population of about 18,600 plus. So that's one method. I'll try to squint and see my own calculation here. So for example, this coming Thursday on August 20th, the state will put out a new 2-week window going back to the time period of July 26th through August 8th. So if you go to the Waseca County website, for example, and add up the new cases, you might count as high as 41 new cases. It could be 39. If you divide that by 1.86, you're going to have about a 22 number. If you use the other methodology where on the same website, if you take the total lab confirmed number, so each day it gives you a new total. So if you simply go to August 8th, take that number, go to July 26th, take that number. So for example, unless things have changed, for August 8th, it's 148. For July 26th, it's 112. And if you subtract that, you're getting 36.
Wouldn't you subtract out the number from July 25th?
I'm sorry, I'm trying to.
But
So you had said what?
wouldn't you be subtracting from the number from August 8th? You take that number and subtract the number from July 25th rather than the 26th, because you want to include the number for the 26th. Otherwise, I think you're shortening it a day, but I could be wrong.
Yeah, possibly. I'm just sharing with, this is consistent with what a few of us have been
Okay.
doing, but thank you. I'm gonna make a note of that. Thank you.
Would be a 7-day period, right, is what you're looking at?
14.
Or 14, or,
14.
yeah,
Yep.
2 weeks worth, yeah.
14-day period. You just count the 14 days.
Yep.
Okay. Either way, sometimes those numbers, no matter what, are gonna be a little different if you look at that. And so you try to look at a range. And so unless yeah, it's gonna be more at that 20, possibly, in between 20 and 22. That's only a projection. That's not a confirmation. When you go is the specimen as far as cases by MDH, and that's lagging data as well. So I cannot, there's no guarantee in the projecting forward. And I think that's what makes this difficult for all of us. There's no guarantee looking ahead of even when it comes out on September 3rd. Or even the August 27th, let alone, not this week, but next week. And if you just count up the new cases, for example, I think my latest count was 39. And so that would come out to about a 21 figure.
But Dale, in general, these numbers are trending down. You look at all these numbers across the state. I realize Waseca might bump up for a second. Look in here, I've been looking at it all day long. They're trending down. Now, they could spike back up when school starts. I get that, but
Sure.
I mean, I haven't calculated it, but I sit here and look at all these numbers. They spiked end of June, early July, if you guys look at that a little bit. They started to spike I'm sure there was a timeline there and whatever happened. But then the last 3 reports that have come out, in general, they're trending down. Now, we might see a bump, but I'm trying to read through here and I can't find where it says that we would have to change our model if we get one bump up on one report. I can't find
Yeah.
anywhere where it says that.
So some of my, even as recent as today, my communication with the Department of Ed and Department of Health, we asked these specific questions. What if we start in a model and then our number goes up into another parameter? And the response that I got back was, you'll need to adjust, and they used the word quickly. And I think, as I shared with one of you earlier, that I don't know what quickly means, but that I guess that we would have to find out more. I think every school district will be assigned in a week a regional support team. And also in the guidance you look about working closely with the health departments as well, which we are doing. In fact, just even yesterday afternoon, in touch with the person at Waseca County who said that as they even look at the 2-week windows, and every day there's a new 2-week window, even though the state just publishes it on Thursday. Today you can count back you can do that. Some of us are doing that daily. So today's a new 14-day window, yesterday was a different one, and so on. Our data that we're using isn't all that good, though.
I just don't want the state to spin us in a circle here. I don't think it's right. I mean, we should be able to be, I understand if our numbers crank up to 28 or, I mean, there's a line here in the sand somewhere. But if we're hovering around a point or two over in one county that has less population than our other, it's half. There's 86,633 people in our 3 counties. Waseca County is only 19,000. I mean, it's not your fault or anybody here's fault, but they're not. They're
Yeah, if you looked at the 3 counties as a whole.
yeah, they're
you've
not.
got
And
your point
I
is
had
that
questioned
fast,
Dale
right?
this, and he was right. And I looked it up just because I saw it for myself. They want you to take the worst case scenario.
Yeah.
Well, I just don't. And besides that, so the next thing is with that, which is a question I would have for them, not for you, is, you know, of our three counties, you know, we've got the three big towns. We got Waseca, Albert Lea, and Owatonna. They're 52,300 people, those three towns. They have nothing to do with us. You know, they're 60% of the population in these three counties. Well, I wish we had geographic data of these cases and where are they.
There is some information on per zip codes, so you can do that.
Well, I didn't look long enough today. I borrowed a little, but when we're talking a number of 18 in Waseca, like the 1.9 number you're using, that's only 35 people. And where are these people? That's what I'm kind of curious.
We had looked at some numbers at home, and I think just using Waseca County as the example, I think it showed that there was 114 or something like that in the county, and only 14 of them had come from our district. So the rest
Cases, you mean?
Yeah.
Okay.
So the rest was, you know, Janesville, Waseca.
Sure.
You know, so the number, kind of to your point of the number that's truly affected by our district is rather small.
Well, that's my
in
point. I'd
comparison.
like to argue. I'm sure there's stubborn people like I am, but, you know, when we're sitting here with 8.19 on this last number that on the sheet I have in Freeborn County, 12, you know, we dropped 2.5 points on in Steele County, and then the one number, I mean, my point is I want our kids in school, at least the elementary, the way it was presented by the meetings you guys had. I think it's important to get these elementary kids in school. I mean, I'm not unrealistic in that if the number jumps up to 30, well, I understand we don't want a bunch of people getting sick, but.
Some of the conversations, that question has been asked over and over, and some of the conversations, whether one agrees or not, how much do people move around within a county? You could say that if you're a Janesville sitting right next door to Blue Earth, too. And there's some theory that if you look at the Janesville zip code up there, it's heavier, and is that kind of a spread over from Blue Earth a little bit? So, but I guess the question, some will say, you need to stick with that general countywide data at this point. If nothing else, I mean, how much are you people moving throughout the county? So I just offer that. You know, just visiting as recent as yesterday with the person at the county health, they've been monitoring, and they are. It's very likely we will be over 20 for the next 14-day period case count. And it doesn't take much. 37 is the threshold for us right now to remain under 20. If you keep track of that. So I feel my role for you tonight, and continue to be that, is to share with you as much information as I can, advise you as best as I can. I just believe, and what you need to think about and consider tonight is the possibility of those numbers trending upward, which is what I'm hearing at the county level. And then, based on what we know at this time, making a move between models. And I think the response today I got again today is, if you're a district who wants to be in a less restrictive, based on what even the parameters allow, we will need to work through and consult with the state on that.
In other words, we need to get approval from the state, so.
Correct. You know, I think, you know, that your questions that you've been asking, you know, drilling down to the county, within the county, and see where that actually is at, is a valid one. And right now, it even speaks to, in the guidance you perhaps have read, that, you know, work with your health department, your local health department, the state health department, to better understand what that means for you. And so, I just feel I have to just make sure you're aware that, you know, right now, we're 3 weeks away. I don't know, it would have been more difficult to make a decision even earlier to tonight.
Right.
So we're in a spot of, you know, what we have to do is we have to notify MDE no later than Tuesday, August 25th, of how we're starting the school year. 2 weeks prior to our first day. So that's the absolute. Of notifying them of how we decide to start the school year. That could even change after that time, and then the question would be, what kind of process and how quickly do we need to react? That's where we would be working with our support team, our regional support team, and the health departments. So I think you need to make as best of a decision as you can tonight, knowing what we know at this point.
I watched the governor's media announcement on this, and somebody had asked at that point, well, it's like, you know, if you're in Hennepin County, let's say you're the city of Edina Public Schools, are you stuck with the county-wide numbers? Because the city of Edina was actually a city, of course, that was keeping its own numbers, so their data was readily available. And the answer was no, the city can look to their own numbers. Our problem is, Trav, the county's not keeping those numbers for us.
Walsh also said he was gonna give the school districts the freedom, yeah. But the way you read these regulations, there's not much freedom.
Well, the freedom is.
I didn't understand his
Yeah.
message like it came out on print.
I think, the good news is that we're not like stuck with a statewide mandate,
Yeah,
Right.
okay? So it
That's
did
where
put
you
it
call
on the
freedom.
community.
Right.
yeah.
The bad news, I guess, is well, it's good news, bad news. The good news is we're small towns and rural areas, and thus far, we've done fairly well as far as levels of disease, but they can only break down these numbers so far. And maybe in the future, the 3 counties would be able to provide information by school district. But right now, we don't have that from the health department. I don't know where the zip code data's coming from.
I'd have to check with T.
Was that Star Tribune?
No, just something that she found through the county. So I don't know if it's relating to the daycare side of things that she's got to kind of keep an
Okay.
eye on. But she was able to find per zip code, at least for Waseca County. So I'll check with her.
Yeah, it's on Department of Health. You can drill down to zip codes.
Okay.
Okay.
The thing that, and again, I served on that, I was happy to serve on that council, and we've talked through a lot of these same questions thoroughly in that council, and, you know, in my decision-making process to bring this to a recommendation to the board, you know, or as a recommendation to go all in person was, again, though we're pushing that number in Waseca County to the limit perhaps, and perhaps might even tick over it. I still think in my decision-making, those other 2 counties being way light played into my mind of saying, let's push for that in person. And again, I know what the rules are, but back to Dr. Carlson stating that we'll have this person assigned to us to work through some of this. I think that should matter if we are pushing toward that upper limit in 1 county and the other 2 remain slow or real light. Again, as a general school population, I feel it's light. know the answer to it, but there are those types of things, and again, that's the push. I agree 100% with Travis, and that isn't news from any educator. In-person education is the best, especially for our youngest learners, but safety's right up there too.
I'm just going to show you, there is another second very important piece to the decision, is you also have to make sure that you have all of these in place. If you don't have these in place, you must go to distance learning for all. We feel we do. For both an in-person and hybrid, you'd have to meet everything on the left. For hybrid, you would have to meet everything on the whole slide, both left and right. So this is what the decision as of last Thursday was by the advisory council, and others that were part of that can speak if they want. My takeaway was, one of the takeaways is that there was some who, that said, okay with the data that we have, but if it upticks, if it goes up, and so on, we need to monitor that and we need to react to that. So I feel part of this is to just share with you what the advisory council looked at and decided. What I've gone ahead and done is you have a resolution that talks about directing the superintendent to implement that model. It authorizes the superintendent and board chair to implement a different learning model if time and public health does not allow for this to hold a school board meeting. And then make sure that I am updating you regularly on guidance. I really only thought there'd even be just two models in consideration here. So that one, or the hybrid learning for all. And so that's the only difference in these two, otherwise the other points are the same. So I guess, my role again, I hope that I have, this is not right now to project out. It's not an exact science. That's what makes this difficult. I just have to just say that we have, the last so many weeks, we've consistently been in that mid-upper teens and then ticked into the 20 range. And my conversation with our health department in consultation is that where they still see it going and sitting there for the next at least 2 weeks. So I just need to, I know I've heard some comments about if we end up in 20 or a little above, I don't want you to leave here tonight that you can expect that we don't have to move. So that's the best I can offer you tonight.
We may have to move, but they never gave a hard and fast date.
Yeah, but that's the best I can offer you tonight.
Well, they didn't give a date, but they did say you're gonna have to change to hybrid and you need to do it quickly.
Right.
So no, there's not a date trap, but the response was quickly. That
If our numbers are so skewed, maybe it can be explained to them. I don't.
Let me just, the advisory council, the first time we met, we were at 20.2. I don't believe there was the option to have, if they needed to make a decision that day, there wasn't any other option than going hybrid for all. Now, we didn't go there. Decided to reconvene. So, listen, could that change as we march forward? Will there be more conversation about You know, how do you drill down to, on a present 14-day period, during that period, it's not isolated, it's not heavy in your local school district. And then how do you project out where that trend is going to be in what community? I don't have the answer to that. And that's why we would have to work closely with those local and those county and state health departments. What just simply needs to happen is somehow a decision to start the school year. And yes, please, I don't want anybody to think that I or the administration or anybody else, we want students back in our schools. Absolutely. We believe in that.
This is Neil. I got a question, Mr. Carlson, on whether it's now or in the future when you gotta change from one model to another. What type of time frame do you think we can do that? Would it be a week, 2 weeks for parents, faculty, everybody to adjust? How adaptive would we be able to be?
A question, Mr. Slake, that we are still trying to look at. I think that I don't know. I don't know. I hate to even offer a response where I just don't know. And whether someone's going to say a week or less, I don't know. And I should have started out, just a reminder, this is a different decision process that we're dealing with tonight. This is all about how we start the school year. This is different than our protocol that we'll follow if we have experienced any positive cases in our buildings. That's a different, and none of you have asked about that, but I just wanted to clarify. That will be a different process that will also work with our health departments. So Mr. Slake, I'm sorry, I just don't think right now I can predict what that would look like or mean.
That means the state wouldn't know what's quickly either. I mean, all we can do is work with the best tools we have. We got models, so I mean, and I guess that's the biggest thing is trying to stay consistent both for staff to parents to everybody, and yet be more aware of, like you say, if we had something in our building is a bigger, quicker response.
As with all of you, you know, we know we have staff and families that we all want students to get to be in school, but also a lot of sensitivity to the safety and the health issue. And so, so anyway, I still, Mr. Slake, I just feel like, you know, quickly, that would be more, in my opinion, a matter of days than weeks. So I'll leave it at that.
I guess the other thing, if I'm supposed to represent the people in our community, I've seen some people on social media that sure don't want to be around or their kids go to school or whatever, but every single, and I don't mean most, every single person I've talked to with kids in school wants them back in school. Now that's got to be within reason, as long as it's safe, but especially these elementary kids, as long as it's safe and we can do it, you know, correctly. They all want their kids in school.
Well, we just listened to a long list of measures that are going to be in place. Our cleaning is stepped up how many fold from where we've been, and again, I feel confident in that. I also feel confident in administration handling an outbreak if it happens in our school. We will adjust even more quickly to something specific to a class. So there's a little bit of a comfort level there, and I agree, people are pushing. I will brush on the social media portion of that you brought up, and I couldn't agree more with you, Travis. There are people that are really taking the opportunity to use social media to justify their thought process, whether, I'm not going to mention individual names or even groups, but I think the one thing we want to be careful of here when we talk about social media and a subject such as this, because there are absolutely two completely different sides to this story, but I would ask the NRHEG district to be leaders in the social media category in being respectful to other people's ideas, be very considerate when you're posting. The best advice I've ever heard on posting on social media would be go ahead, get your thoughts in order, or even maybe type it out, but wait a day before you hit it and post it out there to the world, because it's a very difficult subject, one of the tougher ones that I've been involved with, and being respectful and thoughtful and meaningful and viewing other people's opinions on this is what's going to make this system successful at NRHEG, and I expect it out of people in our district. So that's the social media aspect of this, in my opinion. You know, we've got a wealth of information. We've done everything the state has asked us to do. I applaud Dr. Carlson and the administration for the work they've done in looking at numbers, and this thing has cost people sleep. We've got a decision to make here. We're 2 hours into the meeting here already, a little better than. Are we going to be 100% right? I don't think so. I don't think you can be. I don't think the public expects us to be. But bottom line, we've got a decision here to make. We owe it to our parents, our students, our staff. Let's make a decision here where we're going. There will always be questions. Individual questions can be fielded back to the administration, but I think it's time to move forward on the subject and live with that result.
I'd like to follow the direction of the committee and make a motion to start school in-person learning for elementary and hybrid learning for secondary.
And is that, because we have the resolution,
Okay.
so, I'm sorry, Mr.
Well,
Ralph.
adopt the
I should have
resolution.
reminded,
Yep.
I'm sorry.
And
That's what the resolution would state,
Right.
and then there's just other pieces to that, but thank you, yeah, okay.
Is there a second to that resolution?
I'll second.
So the resolution to start the school year with an in-person for the elementary and hybrid for the secondary is on the floor. It's resolution was introduced by Mr. Routh, seconded by Ms. Flatness. I will give you one more time for questions here. We have the chance to discuss this motion before it is voted on. Are there any other questions that we would like to address before we go to a roll call vote on this resolution?
Dr. Carlson, I just kind of struggle with having two buildings on two different schedules. Looking at it as a parent, if I have a student in elementary and secondary, their schedules aren't coinciding with each other. I think it just would be, I don't know, maybe a little bit on the difficult side for some families. I don't know what your thoughts are.
Yeah, my thought, well, I don't know, Ms. Mueller, my thoughts under this plan, elementary level, are you just, so you have a secondary, let's say those that have a secondary student who's gonna be hybrid every other day, in person, while their younger sibling at the elementary or your younger child will be in person every day. Yeah, I don't know.
We're gonna ask, I mean, I'll field that one. We're gonna ask for some complications in families here, there's no doubt about it. There are also parents that are sending their children off to college while they have one in high school. So again, I think there are things that parents are going to be expected to adjust to here regardless. We also go back to the scenario of how do you line up daycare for 2 days a week and 3 days the next week. So these things are not ideal. I wish we would have never heard of COVID-19 and we'd be talking about wrapping up a building project, but questions are out there and it's going to be complicated.
I have ongoing concerns about setting us up to have to make a transition quickly and having staff having to pivot and having parents have less time to find daycare should the numbers increase as the county is suggesting they're likely to do. And I appreciate the fact that perhaps as a district, this isn't a fair model for us, but this is the model we're stuck with. So my question is, are we as a board then, as a part of our motion, suggesting that Dr. Carlson and our board chair immediately, if those numbers go up, immediately change so that we're hybrid across the board? Or are we suggesting that they then immediately work with the state of Minnesota? Or are we just gonna wait and see what happens and decide at that point?
Don't we also have, if we are close to numbers, we can write a letter to the state as well, if we are lingering on that 20-ish to 8, I mean, if we're right around, we have that option as well, right? To write a letter
Yep.
and stating, we have these other 2 counties that are low, this is, you know, we're 40%. I mean, we are subject to do that as well, correct?
I would, yes, I would, in the consultation process, I would suggest most immediate, we will be visiting with that specific county public health, as well as our regional support team. That's what I feel that I will insist on doing. Yep.
Any further discussion? This time, Ms. Flatness, I will call upon you to do a roll call vote, please.
Karen Flatness, aye. Joanne Maloney.
No?
Rich Mueller.
No.
Travis Rauch.
Aye.
Neil Schlake.
Oops, we must have lost him.
Yeah, I don't show him.
Hello? No, we're voting. We just called, you're on speakerphone. Hang on here just a second, I'm going to put you on speakerphone then. Okay, Neil, I don't know where you lost us, but.
Right shortly after your stuff on.
Okay, hang on. We have a resolution on the floor, made by Mr. Rowe, seconded by Ms. Flatness, to start with elementary in person and secondary in hybrid. And we are going through the roll call vote currently, and Ms. Flatness.
Neil Schlake.
Aye.
Dan Schmidt.
Aye.
Rick Schultz.
Aye. I will leave you on speakerphone here, Neil, if you want to continue to participate.
I'm
All
sorry,
right.
I got something I shouldn't have touched.
You're on speakerphone. The resolution carries 5-2. Thank you, Ms. Flatness. We will be starting the school year in person in the elementary, and secondary will be in the hybrid model. Thank you, everyone, for the discussion. Again, I appreciate and respect everyone's opinion on this matter, and we're going to get through this, so thank you. Moving on to the next item of business, we have the student handbooks for 2021. Dr. Carlson, please.
The challenge here is we're gonna these are all important items. We're going to do it. I'm going to ask the two principals if they could just, as quickly as possible. We don't want to shortcut any of this. We're also sensitive to our time, but, so, I don't know which order. Who wants to go first?
Me.
Okay?
You always do first.
You were first on the.
We'll be quick. We're using the same kind of format. Of course, we'll make whatever policies that come through, MSBA will make those changes, but really just a couple different things. We bolded a section that talks about if you get caught cheating or plagiarizing or academic dishonesty, that can impact your extracurricular situation. And the other part is the masking. I think it's like on page 19 or so, that just indicates kind of the same as the dress code. It's incorporated as part of that. Anything that would not be allowable, that would be derogatory, that sort of thing, would hold the same. Otherwise, done.
Thank you, Mr. Bond. This is, I think, almost a 100-page document, so I didn't even start to try to scroll through as he was talking. Mr. Anderson?
At the elementary, significant changes included information for our families on the new east entrance and what they can expect and what we will expect for that, the student dress code regarding masks. And then last spring, we were in a situation where we had to send our devices home. That hasn't been the norm at the elementary. We typically do not send our devices home, but we did, and we see the need for that continuing. So in our acceptable use policy for families, we did add the one line about the return of the device and returning it in the same condition that it went home, and if not, they understand that they may be charged for repair and replacement.
Board members, questions? I know that's quick, but questions about the handbooks? There is a motion to accept the handbooks for 2020, 2021.
The handbooks are listed individually. Did you want to make a note and
Oh,
put them
I'm
together?
sorry.
Just an
We can do
FYI.
them, we can do them together.
Thank you.
Yep.
Just wanted to.
Unless there's a problem with that, but entertain the motion to approve both of them if that's possible.
Sure.
I'll make a motion to approve both the secondary handbook and elementary handbook as revised and presented.
Second.
Motion made by Ms. Maloney, seconded by Mr. Schmidt to approve both the secondary and elementary handbooks as presented. Is there any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Yep.
Whoops. Oh,
Sorry.
someday
I
I'll
know you were
catch
trying
on.
to hustle us along
Ms.
as well.
Flatness,
So,
help me out.
Karen Flatness, aye. Joanne Maloney.
Aye.
Rich Mueller.
Aye.
Travis Rouse.
Aye.
Neil Schlake.
Aye.
Dan Schmidt.
Aye.
Rick Schultz.
Aye. That motion carries. Moving into workforce, the letter of assignment. Dr. Carlson, please.
Yes, Claire Jensen is recommended to be our 3 to 4-year-old new preschool teacher through Community Ed. And this was moved, it was a non-consent because Ms. Flatness, I think, is looking to abstain
Correct.
from that. So any questions there? Otherwise, motion to approve Ms. Jensen's hire.
So moved.
Second.
Motion made by Mr. Schmidt, seconded by Mr. Schlake to approve the letter of assignment for Ms. Claire Jensen as presented. Any further discussion? Roll call vote with Karen Flatness abstaining, so.
Joanne Maloney.
Aye.
Rich Mueller.
Aye.
Travis Rouse.
Aye.
Neil Schlake.
Aye.
Dan Schmidt.
Aye.
Rick Schultz.
Aye. Motion carries. Compensation of coaches and co-curricular advisors for the 2021 Memorandum of Understanding. Dr. Carlson, please.
Thank you, and as Ms. Bentley is sitting here, I just want to thank her for her time working together on this. This is the result of the potential, the continual unknown, what will happen to activities, both through the high school league and in our own situation, our own in-house, non-high school league, whether there are just some year-long activities, whether that's yearbook, so on. We also have other competition activities that happen that are not a high school league, but maybe sponsored by others. So the interest was to come up with something fair to those coaches and advisors, that if something shortens their season, that how do we address that? The agreement is we work together. What's before you in very general terms is that it would be dealt proportionally based on the amount of the season that is held. So in the MOU, Ms. Bentley and I, we even offered a couple examples to help clarify to clarify how this would be applied. So I also want to acknowledge Mr. Stork, Dan Stork, for his work too. He's working closely with all those individuals to identify what the season is now, so that if something happens sometime during the season, we have a number to compare it to. Okay, so anyway, Ms. Bentley, anything else to offer? I don't put you on. Okay.
You're summarizing it very nicely.
Okay. So, questions? Otherwise, a motion to approve the MOU. It has gone through the appropriate voting process by the whatever members the association felt was necessary. So,
I'll make a motion to approve as presented.
Second.
Motion made by Mr. Schleich, seconded by Mr. Schmidt to approve the memorandum of understanding as presented. Is there any further discussion? Ms. Flatness?
Karen Flatness, aye. Joanne Maloney.
Aye.
Rich Mueller.
Aye.
Travis Ralph.
Aye.
Neil Schleich.
Aye.
Dan Schmidt.
Aye.
Rick Schultz.
Aye. Motion carries. 2020-21 COVID-19 plan. Dr. Carlson, please.
well, and I must acknowledge a very critical person, and she is still on with us, I see, and our school nurse, Carrie Petzinger, and Carrie, thank you for staying on. I think you're still there, are you?
Yes, I am.
Yeah, so thank you. Carrie and I, we've been working, and there's been other people involved in this process too, but she has played the lead role in this, of working hard and putting this together. So we're given especially the hour, but this is important. The purpose for this preparedness plan is in many ways to lay out our protocol and processes for the workplace. So our two school buildings in general. And so we have tried to, you see the table of contents, some general categories that we are trying to hit. So when we think of the workplace, think of school buildings. So you'll see the word workplace a lot of places, but we also will maybe insert the word school at times too. So this is a model, a little bit of a template that we followed, and grabbed resources from so many different places. And so we're gonna scroll through this. There are some things that we want to bring to your attention. I think I'm going to do my best to facilitate the scroll through. Carrie is online to really to especially help to respond to questions or highlight things that I may miss. So, and I need to say, this is a very important document too for especially our employees, of how we're laying out different things for them. So we offer a little bit of an introduction again of what the purpose for this document is, but emphasizing that The only way this is going to work is that everybody needs to, be part of this, all our employees. They need to own this, and we work through this together. So let me just scroll down. I'm just going to scroll. I'm scrolling down to the emergency response team. And there's a group of people that, in many ways, most of that group, well, a large part of that group has already been involved in some degree with this plan, but that's a group of people that, especially for the COVID-related issues, that we will involve as needed. So we have some very important, this is a critical area involving our employees that we try to hit all the different scenarios that we can right now of what they need to do. One of the things that we've created that's, as you consider approval tonight of this, you're also, I can get my cursor and open up the health plan. Huh?
You had it there, it went smooth.
Yeah. We actually originally had this part of the agenda, but it's within the preparedness plan. This takes you right to the website, and we're working on it to take all these forms, all these things to the website so that our employees have it. And so on the employee health plan, it's kind of a quicker look at what things that we already have in the preparedness plan. We can come back to these as needed, but so as we scroll through, we have a lot of resources. Carrie has done a lot of work. I'm going to pick on, so the protocol for sick employees when they're at home. So we're already started trying to take them right to our website, and we're working on having these documents under staff resources, under COVID resources ready for them. So we're outlining kind of a protocol. If I'm at home, what should I do? We also have that noted on that employee health plan as well. So that's an example. We go through other examples. So protocol for employees to communicate when sick or experiencing symptoms while at work. And so we have a document started that will link them to a place that they can go. And we're still, well, it's there. There we go. And so, again, Carrie has done much of the work on these, of putting this together. I also want to acknowledge Corinne Schuler for her work specifically to the health plan as well. So we scroll down, protocol for isolating employees in the workplace. So what if an employee is not feeling well during the day, suspected, and so on? What do we do right there until they can leave and head home? So we have some information there in protocol. Employee leave policies, this is a special where Corinne has come in, very helpful. And so we go through the different leave benefits, things that now are available specifically because of the COVID. There's extended family leave, for example, related to that. So we go through that. Accommodations for underlying medical conditions. And so within our health plan, we're coming up with a Form 2 that employees can fill out and work with their supervisor on accommodations. I thought that was somewhere, but we'll see if we. So anyway, protocol for informing employees if they have been exposed to a person at their workplace. So we have protocol for that. And just a reminder of the privacy protection for employees. We get into social distancing. And for the adults, we will continue to enforce this as best we can, regardless of the models, but especially, obviously, the hybrid. And even if we're in a distance learning, then adults that are in the building would be under a strict social distancing. So there's a section on social distancing in general, and I'm scrolling through this. You know, Mr. Anderson, Mr. Bunn talked about signage. We talked more about that, the importance in our plans for marking the different buildings and places and areas and so on. A lot of resources that we are providing in this document for people, especially our staff. Workplace changes for employees, we just have a running list of what they should know and expect. And this whole document, like many others, could be a continual work in progress as we add things and as things change. Let me just, so you can see the different protocols for preventing persons gathering in groups, sharing and cleaning of equipment, sharing of vehicles. We get down to masks, and you've heard a lot about our requirements for masks. So we talk about that with employees. There we will add that board policy, which we'll look at pretty soon. So a lot of resources, and I'm just going to continue scrolling down. Our PPE and essential cleaning supplies, employee hygiene, a little bit about source controls. We get into then, even ventilation, resources, the cleaning and disinfection protocol. We've involved our lead custodians. We're starting to identify our specific cleaners and the use of those, EPA number. So I know I'm scrolling through this quickly. Training is going to be important. We are obligated to make sure we are in-servicing all our employees on this, which Carrie and I will be doing to start the school year off. So a lot of information under cleaning and disinfecting. Drop-off, pickup, and delivery practices. So another emphasis on training. Again, we will, perhaps as early as Wednesday, depending on your action tonight, we will put this out. We've already put out this as a draft with our employees so that they have a little bit of a heads up, but we will officially communicate this. And then a lot of, just in an appendix, a lot of additional resources. So, Carrie, I can put you, just any general comments before we take questions, or should we just take questions? I'll leave it up to you.
I don't have anything to add at this point.
Okay. Board members, questions? I know that was quick, but
This, again, I would assume is a mandate from the state that you have this
correct. Yep.
part of
Yes.
the package.
Yes. Carrie, thank you so much for staying on tonight, and appreciate all your work on this. And it's just appreciate it personally a lot. And I know this will be an ongoing work in progress, but what a great start. Thanks to you. So board members, any questions? Otherwise, we can let Carrie go.
You're welcome to hang on to have the motion approved here if we get a motion carried.
I'll make a motion to approve as presented.
A second.
Motion made by Mr. Schlake, seconded by Ms. Maloney to approve the 2021 COVID plan as presented. Any further discussion? Ms. Flatness, please.
Karen Flatness, aye. Joanne Maloney.
Aye.
Rich Mueller.
Aye.
Travis Rauch.
Aye.
Neil Slake.
Aye.
Dan Schmidt.
Aye.
Rick Schultz.
Aye. Moving on.
Thank you, Carrie.
Thanks, Gary. Moving on to the resolution for calling a general election. Dr. Carlson, please.
Yes. Okay. we have a slate of 7 candidates for our 3 4-year terms. And I know I just want to take this opportunity, I know we'll have an opportunity down the road, but to acknowledge Mr. Slake. And so we'll say that for a later time, Mr. Slake. But thank you. You'll see that on the slate, there are 7 candidates, and so we have, let me make sure that, so we have, as far as Tara Engel, Karen Flatness, Jennifer Johnson, Nancy Laugesen, Dan Schmidt, Lauren Shanerock, Tammy Tufty-LeCan. And so that's part of this resolution as far as setting the general election. And then we have 1 candidate right now for the 2-year term, Ms. Joanne Hagan-Maloney. So what your work tonight simply is to do is to, as far as calling the notice for this general election, you see the document, the ballot, and the different places. This one, of course, is part of the general election. And so with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions. Otherwise,
I'll make a motion to approve the election ballot as presented.
Second.
Motion made by Mr. Slake, seconded by Mr. Schmidt to approve the calling of a general election as presented. Any further discussion? Ms. Flatness, please.
Karen Flatness, aye. Joanne Maloney.
Aye.
Rich Mueller.
Aye.
There he is. Travis Ralph.
Aye.
Neil Schlake.
Aye.
Dan Schmidt.
Aye.
Rick Schultz.
Aye. Moving on to the policies, we have a first reading here for your consideration tonight. Dr. Carlson, would you like to
yes.
introduce that?
The policy committee met, and so is forwarding to you for first reading approval. I think I'm just going to briefly bring up 2 policies. The first one is 908. This is a new policy that we have developed as a school district about scheduling of student activities. This goes back to, we haven't had a formal policy on the Sunday, Wednesday night holiday protocol, and past practice has been, at some point in the past years, it was decided that administration come to the board on each case and ask for your approval. And if there wasn't time to do that, we worked with the board chair. The idea behind a policy is have the board state, here's how we're going to do it, and then let administration, which would include AD, principals, and even our community ed director, then put that in place. So it would result in not having to come back then to the board on each of those requests. So we have followed the Minnesota State High School League bylaws in developing this. We've applied in general similar expectations for our non-Minnesota High School League activities. And it's really holding true that no games, practices, meetings, you can see the list on Sundays. They require that. What comes into play is things like a field trip on Sunday up to Gopher Wrestling. A lot of these collegiate events are on Sundays, for example. And so in the past, we've come to you, or at least the board chair. This would outline that so that we can just move forward administratively to address those requests. We address Wednesday evenings. Again, that doesn't change from our practice that we are committed to. We encourage, we look to reserving Wednesday nights for family, which also includes, church and other commitments. The holiday, we've identified now those holidays that absolutely nothing should be happening. And we decided to list that. I think there's a lot of, the high school league doesn't take, there's no bylaw. They don't prevent anything. They discourage. And so we've gone through that, and we've identified some non-negotiable days. What I'm trying to read, Christmas Eve Day and Christmas Day, New Year's Day. So otherwise, we look for coaches and advisors to work with the AD, principal, community ed director on exceptions to any of those. So this has been in the making for some time, and we're ready to present that. So we present that to the policy committee. And then the second one that I'll just bring up is the masking, the face covering policy, which is very new. School boards, the School Board Association would say a school board isn't required to adopt this in order to enforce face coverings. You can do that through the executive order. But the School Board Association did draft this. I recommend it to the policy committee. I think it is important for our Board of Education to adopt this as well, and to support the importance of this. And so this is really the template from the School Board Association. Again, the policy committee went through this, and unless they have other comments or things, I think it's moving forward again for the full board's consideration. I would say there, on this one, there's a chance that as some things change, we'll have to monitor this and see. So for example, on the listing of the face coverings, there's some out there that will question bandanas, neck gaiters, things like that, and the true effectiveness. The use of shields only. So those are things that, as we continue to learn more, there's a possibility that this may need to be tweaked locally, especially if we see it tweaked at the state level. Okay, I just wanted to highlight, the policy committee wanted me to highlight those two. The rest of them, the policy committee went through, discussed any that they felt that they had questions on. Otherwise, I'll let those policy committee members make any comments and answer any questions. Otherwise, in the end, be looking for a motion to accept for a first reading these policies, and then they would come back at the September meeting.
I'll make a motion to accept the first readings as presented.
Just to make a point, did you want to do them all together? Just an
Yes.
FYI, they were
Yeah.
listed
Yeah.
separately?
I'm sorry.
Nope, that's okay, just making sure we're on the same page.
Yeah, thank you.
Yep.
Motion made by Mr. Schlake, seconded by Mr. Routh to approve the first reading of the policies presented this evening. Is there any other discussion? Ms. Flatness, please.
Karen Flatness, aye. Joanne Maloney.
Aye.
Rich Mueller.
Aye.
Travis Rauth.
Aye.
Neil Schlake.
Aye.
Dan Schmidt.
Aye.
Rick Schultz.
Aye. That concludes our business for this evening. If there were a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Motion made by Mr. Schmidt, seconded by Ms. Flatness to adjourn. Ms. Flatness, please.
Karen Flatness, aye. Joanne Maloney.
Aye.
Rich Mueller.
Aye.
Travis Rauth.
Aye.
Neil Schlake.
Aye.
Dan Schmidt.
Aye.
Rick Schultz.
Aye. We are adjourned.
Thank you, everyone. A long night, a lot of important things. Thank you very much for your time.
Thanks, everyone.
Good night.
Right.
Aye.
Joanne, I did find the county, or the zip code numbers.
So did Karen,
You
she
did
showed
find
it
it
to me.
too? Okay.
Thank you very